Coby White appears to be set to return tonight against the Houston Rockets, barring any setbacks today. We're going to talk about that return, what that could mean for the Chicago Bulls. We're also going to talk about what the Bulls really do need to focus on this offseason and previews tonight's game against the Houston Rockets. All that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize. More importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go and get into this content, man. And Coby White was a full participant in practice yesterday, and Billy Donovan said, barring any type of setbacks, he will be playing in today's game against the Houston Rockets, and the Bulls can definitely use it. When you look at the Houston Rockets and that team and how they perform, this is a team that we definitely can use Coby White's scoring punch with. Now, the Bulls do want to be protective of Coby White. I think that's clear. Everybody kind of knows what we need and want to see from Coby White and how important he's become to the Chicago Bulls team, right? I talked about him in yesterday's episode and just the impact that Coby White has had for the Chicago Bulls team and how, talked about it for a while now, he should be the clear most improved player of the year. And the fact that Coby's only missed 3 games this season, right, I think says a lot to his durability. It says a lot to just how much things have changed for Coby White. We talk a lot about the improvement statistic-wise, but he's also improved in that durability. When you look at the last couple of seasons missing some games for sure for the Chicago Bulls, we're just talking about Coby White missing the first game 3 games ago, and that's because of an accident of him being fell on. And so, if outside of that, Coby is just having such an amazing year. You want to see that continue, and the Bulls are going to need it, right? Final 13 games left for the Chicago Bulls, and these are important ones. Not only tonight with the indication of maybe getting back to 500, even though, like I've said many times before, it's about staying at 500 and maybe getting above 500 than it just is about getting there. But a lot of Bulls fans are looking at this game. This is going to be an important game against the Houston Rockets, and it's good to really get that positive, outlook back on Coby White and him being able to come back to the team. And the team has done really good without him. Ayo Dosunmu stepped up so well in replace of Coby White, stepping into that point guard role. But there's something about their chemistry and synergy together. And you want to bring Coby White back in there, continue seeing Ayo Dosunmu play off him and things like that. See how DeMar DeRozan continues to fit in. We're just a better team with Coby White on the floor than not. And while the Bulls did go 2-1 in those games without Coby White, which is great to see, let's make no mistake about it, we just want to see the Bulls continue to find ways to win basketball games and so that we can continue to see what we can achieve in the postseason, right? There's a little bit of doubt about how far the Bulls can go and things like that shared by me and many others, but when it comes down to it, whatever we're going to get, we want Coby to get that experience. We want Ayo to get that experience. We want Ernelat Batum, Julian Phillips when he does come back. We want these players to get the opportunity to get that experience so that they can continue developing and continue showing what they're going to be going forward for this Bulls core for the long run, right? So Coby White getting that positive injury update is so good just for the team, and his development has just been great. But then we also got an injury update on Patrick Williams, who had his successful surgery yesterday on that foot. A couple of people had already asked, when Pat was going to get that surgery. So that happened yesterday. Clear, nothing, no type of implications or anything happening, complications, I guess I should say, during the surgery. And it was said that he could return to the team as early April, which is only a couple of weeks away. Go back to traveling with the team, being there on the sideline for whatever that's worth. You want him, still being there for camaraderie and things like that. And Patrick Williams is going into a offseason where a lot of questions are going to be around Pat because of the injury and also because of the play, right? What is that extension going to look like for him with the Chicago Bulls? Is it going to be more in line with like what Coby and Ayo got? Is it going to be a little bit more than that, considering he's still a few years younger than them on top of it when he goes into free agency for the first time? We're really looking at that, what that's going to look like for Patrick Williams. And, we'll see, man. I would not be surprised if Pat gets anywhere between $12 and $16 million a year on average. But we'll see if that ends up being the case for real. We'll see what happens with that. But good to hear that Patrick Williams got that surgery, no complications from the surgery, and then now we can go forward and not have to worry about it. But one thing we do got to worry about, and this is the next topic, is what exactly are the Bulls going to do this offseason? Now, I want to be clear here. Whatever the Bulls do in the offseason, a lot of that's going to come down to, I feel like, how this season finishes and who plays a big part in how that finish goes. If you see Ernelat, if you see Coby, if you see Ayo, if you see Julian Phillips, right? If these guys play big parts in how the season ends for the Chicago Bulls. It could drastically change the way and direction the Bulls look at. Do they look at veterans for some spots? But I want to talk about what the needs are, right? And how they fill those needs is on the Bulls, right? But I think when you look at it first, the Bulls need, I would look at 3-and-D players. And I know that's kind of easy. That's to say we theoretically thought we were getting a 3-and-D player in Javon Carter. It didn't necessarily work out. But the Chicago Bulls are in the bottom third of the league as far as offense generated by three-pointers. We take 11.7 per game. That's 25th. Or we make 11.7 per game. We take more than that. That's 25th in the NBA. And we attempt 32.7, which is also 22nd in the NBA. When it comes down to it, the volume isn't there or the efficiency's there. When you see teams that don't necessarily shoot the best volume for three, usually those are teams that have really high percentages. The fact that the Bulls rank towards the bottom of efficiency and three-pointers made, we got to start, working on that. And I really do think that can help this team a lot. That can space out the floor a little bit for Vooch, because Vooch is still going to be here, but for whoever the big is as well, that gives Coby a little bit more room to operate, and it doesn't make Coby's three-point shooting really needed to stretch the defense. What Coby does in three-point range, it really helps that defense, but we need to. And when you look at the Bulls as well, we lose so many games due to a math problem. Upping the efficiency, upping the 3 points made per game, upping just our offense generated from threes would help that solve that math problem, and I think that helps greatly with it. And then when you look at the defense as well. Now, defense we aren't necessarily the bottom, right? We're 16th right now in the NBA, but we can get better in that. And I think especially with paint defense and rim protection, those are two things that we definitely need to improve on. So again, 3-point shooting, defense, if you can get some 3-and-D players, if you can get another shot blocker, that's going to go really well for the Chicago Bulls. I talked about it before. You got maybe a player that can bring some 3-point shooting and defense in Ernalop on this team. Julian Phillips is another one that could end up being that. But I think the Bulls are going to look to kind of add that with the veteran players as well, depending on what they do in this offseason. And then overall, when we go into this offseason, not looking at specific players, but the thing that we need to focus on the most is finding better balance overall with our roster. And that's just what it comes down to, right? We need the better balance. We haven't really had that. And this isn't just about Zach LaVine, but I do want to talk about it. It seems like the Bulls are still set to be looking to move Zach LaVine this offseason. And because of that, you got to look at what Zach LaVine is. Over the course of Zach LaVine, since the start of the 2018-19 season, he's averaged 24.7 points per game. He's averaged 4.4 assists, and doing all that on 47% shooting from the field, 38.5% shooting from three-point range, and 83% shooting from free throws. Zach LaVine is not bad like some people try to make him out to be. But the key stat in this is that Zach LaVine's been in the league 10 years. 8 out of those 10 years, the team has had a better differential when Zach's not on the court than on the court. So that either means a couple of different things. You have to find a better balance overall, right? You got to bring some things that this team needs is lacking, right? And they try to do that with bringing in Lonzo, bringing in DeMar. Those were players that brought some things to this team that Zach LaVine kind of lacked in. And we need to get back to finding that balance. This core has kind of showed its ceiling. Now, that ceiling is definitely up when you have the young players of this core making leaps. But I don't think that we can sit in a situation to where we're going to bring Zach and DeMar both back. And that may be one of the biggest questions that this front office has to answer this offseason is which one of those guys you bring back, or if you're bringing both of them back, have you made enough changes around them to really kind of change what's going on with the Chicago Bulls? And then lastly, develop your young players. That's how you sustain success. Signing DeMar has been great. He's been amazing, right? Let's not take anything away from that. But when you develop your own young players and you have those players that exceed those expectations, that's truly how you can sustain success over a longer period of time. So that's kind of what you got to focus at as well for the Chicago Bulls team. How do you sustain success? And if you can develop those young players, that goes a long way in that. Coby, Ayo have developed. Now you got to look at Dalen, Julian, Ernalop, which Ernalop is somebody that I really look at and say that he's close to who he's going to be just because he's 24 years old and has played overseas, but he still has room to grow by adapting to the NBA game. What does Adama Sanogo really give you? Henry Drell, does he really turn into your Max Strus like a lot of people have compared him to? But developing your young pieces has to be at the forefront, and it does seem like it is with the player development department and what they've already done working with these young Bulls players. And I think that's a big part in that as well, is developing. So the Bulls got some things that they need to look at this offseason to really kind of change and rejigger what's going on with this team and how the makeup of this team operates. And I think that they can do it. And it's not going to take a whole hell of a lot to do it either. It's going to take some key acquisitions at some key places and maximizing your young talent, developing that young talent, and trusting them over the summer. They trusted Coby. And it's not like Coby showed a lot of flashes last year, but Coby ended last season saying he felt like he can be a starter. He came into this season and proved that. Give the other young players opportunities on this team to prove that. And if you do that, you see what you can do for the Chicago Bulls. Now, something else that I want to talk about, in talking about how this team can change, we know that the Bulls do own their own first-round pick outright in this year's draft. Now, with that said, the NCAA tournament is starting, and I want to talk about some players that the Chicago Bulls, that Bulls fans should look at that could be on the Bulls board in this upcoming March Madness, in this NCAA tournament. And the first one is a guy that I've talked about a lot. He's from Chicago. He goes to Illinois. We've done pretty well drafting a player that's from Chicago and went to Illinois, and that's Terrence Shannon Jr. 6'6", 225-pound wing. He can play either shooting guard, all small or small forward. And I think if you're bringing back DeMar DeRozan, you draft this guy, you have a natural kind of somebody who can step into that. I know we've talked about Patrick Williams being a wing, Julian Phillips should be a wing, and they do have the capability of being that. But this guy's a true 6'5", 6'6", right? He has that 6'9" wingspan, which is something that you definitely want to look at, a 37.5-inch max vertical, and his three-point shooting is starting to come along very well. Check this guy out. I think a lot of people would be impressed by him. Now, mocks have him going high and low. He has the legal concerns, which I'm not going to get into here, which may preclude or keep the Chicago Bulls front office from drafting him because they really don't draft character concerned guys, but he's a guy that I would love the Chicago Bulls to really take a look at and draft. Next up, Kyle Filipowski. Now, I've talked about him a lot. This is a center who's slated in most mocks to go kind of either low lottery or right outside the lottery, can really do a lot. You look at him, a true 7-footer, 650 pounds. He's solid enough with rim protection, which he's increased a lot this season in NCAA. He hasn't been that his whole NCAA career, but he definitely is somebody that's developed that part of his game. And if he's already developed that a little bit, there's reason to think that getting in an NBA game, he can develop that a little bit more. I really like Kyle Filipowski. He's averaging 17 points per game, 8 rebounds, 2.8 assists, doing that on 51% shooting. Oh, and by the way, he's averaging 1.6 blocks per game in the NCAA right now. Kyle Filipowski is somebody that I really do like, and I've liked in this draft for an extremely long amount of time. And he's somebody that, depending on where the draft order falls, could definitely be there for the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears need a center, but not that type of center. But for the Chicago Bulls, I really like what this guy brings. I love the upside that you have with him as well. He's not done developing, and he's a guy that if the Bulls do draft Filipowski, I really think, hey, this is your center of the future. This absolutely could be your center of the future. But another center of the future, going kind of more position of need, sophomore Khalil Ware with the Indiana Hoosiers, 16 points per game, basically 10 rebounds per game, 58% shooting from the field that he's doing that in. And unlike Kyle Filipowski, this guy has been a rim protector since his freshman year, playing for Oregon originally, averaging 1.3 blocks per game there, averaging almost 2 blocks per game now in NCAA. He's also kind of a more modern big. He's shooting the three ball at 42% this season, only taking a little over 1 3-pointers per game, but the rebounding, the shot blocking, the athleticism, getting out in the pick and roll, out in transition, this guy can do it all, and he's really raw prospect. That's why some drafts have him going in the second round, some have him going late first round, but this is a guy that I would say keep on your draft boards, pay attention to, because I think he can do wonders if the Chicago Bulls were to take a look at him. And then another player, the last one that I'm going to talk about here, is Antonio Reeves from Kentucky. You guys know, Kentucky guards, they can be hit or miss in the NBA level. I think there's way more hits than misses. But Antonio Reeves is a guy that I can't wait to dig into the tape. I can't wait to break it down for you guys. He's slated to go somewhere in the lower lotteries by some mocks. Some mocks have him going way, way later, even further into the first round. The problem is the age. He's 23 years old already. He'll be 24 basically his whole rookie season in the NBA, and I think that's why a lot of people have him slated to go lower. But if you're looking for a ready-made prospect, and that's where the Chicago Bulls may need to go rather than the high prospect that they've done before, this guy, 20 points per game he's averaging right now in the NCAA. He's taking 14 shots per game, hitting that at 50% from the field. Oh, and he takes almost 6 3-pointers per game and hits that at a 44% clip. Over the course of his whole collegiate career, 38% three-point shooter, taking 5 3-pointers per game. Not amazing, but extremely solid. This guy, 6'6", 195 pounds, projects more to be a shooting guard than a small forward, but he can fill out to play more of that wing. I really like this guy's talent as well. This guy I think you guys should definitely take a look at also. But enough of that. We do got a game tonight. Let's go ahead and get into this game against the Houston Rockets. This is a team that they have more similarities to the Chicago Bulls than what I think it looks like on paper. The Bulls and the Rockets are both ranked kind of in the same place offensively and defensively on the season. The Rockets are the 17th best offense in the NBA, averaging 113.6 points per game. They're 26 in three-point shooting percentage at 35, and they only take 35 three-point attempts per game, which is upward there, but they aren't hitting at a great clip. The thing that separates the Houston Rockets, they're the 4th best rebounding team in the NBA, and they're the 7th best offensive rebounding team in the NBA as well. They have the 11th best defense, only allowing 112.5 points per game, and they hold their opponents to only shoot 46% from shooting from the field on the year. This is going to be a game where it could be separated by who makes the necessary defensive adjustments and defensive stops. Ime Udoka is a hell of a coach, and he's a coach that does make adjustments, and how Billy responds to that chess match with the Houston Rockets today is going to be key. If Coby White is playing, it's going to be a good matchup as far as the firepower aspect of it, but the Chicago Bulls have to be locked in offensively and defensively this game. You can't have a bunch of turnovers. You can't fall short. You have to be locked in. If you allow the Houston Rockets to go on a run unanswered, it can get really ugly for you against this Houston Rockets team, and so the Bulls got to be prepared. That's the thing that stands out. The game plan defensively tonight is the thing that I'm looking at the most. The Bulls are ranked better than them defensively. The Rockets are ranked worse than them also offensively. But this is not going to be an easy game to beat. The Houston Rockets have beat a lot of good teams today. Teams on the season. They're 33 and 35 on the season. But when you look at their last 3, they have won now 6 games in a row. Have the Houston Rockets won, and on that stretch, they've beat the Trailblazers, the Kings, the Spurs, the Wizards, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Wizards again. Not necessarily the best teams, but when you look at those games against the Cavs and the Sacramento Kings, for example, they won both those games nearly by double digits. They beat the Cleveland Cavaliers by 14. They beat the Sacramento Kings by 8. So this is a team that has that offensive firepower, and they're playing some of their best basketball right now. And then when you look at the roster and how that works out, this is not a team that you want to take lightly. They can spread the ball out. They have defenders on this roster. Alfred Sengun is probably still going to be out with injury, so I don't expect him to play in this game, it can go well for the Chicago Bulls. They're also going to be missing Cam Whitmore, Tari Eason, who's been out for a while, and Steven Adams has been out for a while for them as well. But even outside of that, they still got Jalen Green, who is cooking right now for this team. They have Fred VanVleet, the veteran down there. We know VanVleet has killed us several times before. Jabari Smith's also playing really well for them. And then Dillon Brooks. And we know how much of a disruptor Dillon Brooks can absolutely be. We've been on the opposite side of that before, as have many other NBA teams. This is going to be a game where how we defend, especially the bigs, is going to be important in this game. We can't play the terrible pick and roll defense that we've played in many games before. And this is a lot on the table for the Bulls as far as getting to 500 now. Do the Bulls players look at getting to 500 like we do? I mean, probably because the media makes so much of it, but I doubt they're sitting there watching it like fans do. But hey, this could be a getting over the hump game for the Chicago Bulls, especially considering our next game up is going to be against the Boston Celtics. So the Bulls have to be locked in this game. If they're not, they will get destroyed. And as this has been happening with the Chicago Bulls, every time we're one game below 500, a losing streak happens. Can we avoid that today is one of the biggest questions. And then we get another day off before we face the Boston Celtics on Saturday. So we need the Bulls to be locked in. We need them to be prepared. If they're not, it's going to get ugly. It's not going to be pretty. And it's going to be one of those games where we're all frustrated by. So lock in defensively. How the bigs play today and Andre Drummond and Nikola Vucevic are going to be drastically important for this team, especially considering they're missing their starting center. Now, on top of that, how do the Bulls counteract the rim protection that the Houston Rockets do display at some point in time? That's going to be a thing as well. The spacing, can we hit enough three-point shots as well, considering this isn't a great three-point shooting team, but you don't want to allow them to have that amazing efficiency against you, and then you're just not able to overcome that math problem. So there's a lot of things to be thrown towards the Chicago Bulls tonight. Let's see if they're going to be ready and prepared to deal with it. I have my hopes that they will, but let's see if that comes to fruition, man. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you're following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See Red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.